All right, so today we're going to look at Mormon fundamentalism through a totally different lens. The idea here is that this isn't just some modern split. Nope. It's actually the latest chapter in a struggle that's been going on for 2,000 years. And it gets into some really deep stuff. Questions about power, secret knowledge, and who really gets to say what's true. This quote, "This is everything to the perspective we're digging into." It argues that fundamentalists don't see themselves as a breakaway group at all. In their minds, they're the soldiers who never, ever abandon their post. And that really boils down to this one central question. The historical case we're about to walk through argues that this isn't a story about rebellion at all. It's a story about guardianship. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about what this remnant idea even is. Then we're going to jump way back in time to meet the ancient secret keepers. We'll look at the guy who basically built the blueprint for the institutional church, see how those ancient mysteries supposedly made a comeback, and finally wrap it all up with what this means for the guardians of the hidden stream today. First up, a foot in two worlds. The source we're exploring talks about this group it calls the sacred remnant. These are folks who feel like they're living by a much older, a higher set of rules, even while they're stuck here in the modern world. This is the core identity we need to understand. All right, now this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to jump in a time machine and head all the way back to the 2nd century. Why? Because the argument here is that the exact same conflict we see today was already being fought almost 2,000 years ago, right after the original apostles were gone. This is where that historical mirror starts to take shape. To get what was going on back then, you have to know this one crucial word, gnosis. It's Greek for knowledge, but we're not talking about book smarts. This is about a hidden, divine kind of knowledge. Think higher laws, sacred rituals, stuff that was only revealed to a select inner circle. So back in the 2nd century, this whole gnosis thing basically split early Christianity into two camps. On one side, you had the Gnostics. They believed authority came directly from this secret knowledge. But on the other side, you had the Orthodox bishops, who said, nope, authority comes from holding a public office and being in the official line of succession. And check out how specific this secret tradition was. The Gnostics were talking about having sacred passwords and signs to get past angels, a special sealing ceremony they called the bridal chamber, and this core belief in a higher law that trumped any worldly laws. Now, you're going to want to remember these because they're going to pop up again later in a big way. So, how did the public church end up winning? Well, the source we're looking at points to one guy, Bishop Irenaeus. He's painted as the architect of the whole institutional church model, kind of like the original father of correlation, standardizing everything for everyone. And this timeline, this just shows you the massive scope of the argument. Irenaeus sets up his public one-size-fits-all model around 180 AD, and then, bam, a 1,700-year gap where, according to this view, all those deeper truths were basically buried until Joseph Smith comes along and kicks off what's called a restoration of mysteries. So how'd he pull it off? The source basically lays out his 3-step playbook. Step 1, make it clear that real authority only comes through the public office. That's apostolic succession. Step 2, label any secret or private meetings as illegitimate, heretical. And step 3, simplify the doctrine. Trade what the source calls the deep meat of the mysteries for the simple, easy-to-digest milk of public teachings. Okay, so that's the ancient history. Now let's bring it all back to the modern day, because this is where the parallel really kicks in. The argument is that Joseph Smith was the great disruptor who brought back the very same kind of Gnostic mysteries that Irenaeus had worked so hard to stamp out. And from this point of view, the parallels are, well, they're kind of undeniable. A restored temple with signs and tokens to pass angels? Check. Knowledge of a life before this one? A council in heaven? Check. And the reintroduction of the principle, a higher priesthood law that included plural marriage. The source says these weren't new ideas at all, but a restoration of ancient, hidden truths. Now here is the big aha moment the source presents. This common teaching we hear today, it's framed as a direct echo of Irenaeus' #1 rule, that ultimate authority is tied to the public office, not to any kind of private revelation or even adherence to a higher hidden law. You can see it laid out right here, side by side. It's what the source calls the historical mirror. On the left, you've got Irenaeus' goals from way back in 180 AD, and on the right, what's described as the modern institutional church's approach. The claim is that they're basically mirror images of each other. So when did this shift happen in modern times? The source points right to the manifestos, the official declarations that ended polygamy as the turning point. It's framed as a very deliberate choice, prioritizing the public institution, the public office, over the private higher laws, the private key. Which brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. What is the role of this sacred remnant today? I mean, if the mainstream church chose the public path of Irenaeus, who, in this view, is keeping those private Gnostic-style keys alive? And this quote, this just sums up the whole idea of parallel authority perfectly. It draws this sharp line between the keys to a corporate organization and the keys to the fullness of the priesthood. The suggestion is they aren't always in the same hands. So this table really breaks down the two different jobs, right? You've got the public church. Its role is to provide the milk, that simplified gospel for a huge global institution. Authority flows down like a corporate flowchart. But the priesthood remnant, they see their job as guarding the meat, the deeper mysteries. Their focus is on a kingdom of priests, and authority is seen as a living stream, not a flowchart. And again, the source is really hammering this point home. This isn't some recent spat that started 100 years ago. From this perspective, it's the continuation of a dynamic that's been in play for 2,000 years. And this is where the whole thing gets flipped on its head. You know, if the original Gnostics were branded heretics by the big institution back then, well then being called an apostate today, that's not an insult. It's seen as a historical badge of honor, connecting them directly to that ancient tradition. So what's the end game here? From this perspective, it's not about fighting or breaking away. It's all about preservation. Their goal is to act as guardians of what they call the fullness, to keep that hidden stream of knowledge flowing so it never completely vanishes from the earth. It's a powerful reminder of how much labels and perspective matter, isn't it? The exact same group of people can be called heretics by an institution, seen as rebels by the general public, but in their own hearts see themselves as guardians of a sacred trust. And that really leaves us with a final thought-provoking question this whole perspective poses. Is this group truly guarding an eternal flame, passed down carefully through the ages? Or are they simply the echoes of an ancient conflict, replaying a pattern that history has seen time and time again? That's the heart of the matter we've explored today.